We have 7 minutes between my guest and I just to introduce her to the platform, to you, and for you to get a sense as to what she's all about and what she might engage as we offer an opportunity for the hashtag Tuesday Takeover guest to settle in before she takes over in just shy of 7 minutes from now. Her name is Tlalane Ntuli, small business coach, public speaker, and entrepreneur. Now, with a proven track record in the financial and property sectors, and as the former chief marketing officer at Metropolitan, she has successfully co-founded Space Fanatics, a turnkey project management firm dedicated to transforming spaces into functional works of art. Her entrepreneurial journey includes co-founding Yalu Financial Services, where she propelled a groundbreaking credit life insurance company to remarkable success. With a strong academic background from UCT and other spaces and recognition as a top entrepreneur, Tlalane combines business acumen, creativity to inspire and lead. You're listening to her voice right now.
My voice. Hello.
How does it sound when I read such an impressive profile? I mean, I didn't begin to read all of it. I'm seeing serious figures. Yeah, I'm seeing serious outlets, including Gibbs and Henley. So you've clearly done your homework in the true sense, and you've obviously been around the corporate space, and you're quite familiar with finance, with insurance, with the property sector, as well as the financial services at large. So tell us what we have this evening with your being here and the guests you propose to have the conversations with.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited about this evening because I've done a lot of radio interviews, but I haven't actually ever done a radio takeover, which means you're giving me your job for
40 minutes, yes.
For 40 minutes. Like, are you comfortable with that?
Very comfortable.
You literally just said I'm a little bit of a weird guest.
And I appreciate that precisely because you're going to come with an unorthodox approach, engage us possibly on issues that I've previously even engaged on, and it's a question of how you package it, how you understand it, what your disposition with that, together with the guests you bring on board. And I think that's one of the great victories for this segment is that even if we've had a topic previously discussed, it will be done with a different angle perspective and a different kind of depth by virtue of the different personalities at play.
Oh, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. I never thought about that actually. But I am looking forward today to talking about something that I think is almost taboo. Actually, wait, before I say that, did you know that October is Mental Health Awareness Month?
I would lie and say yes, but I probably don't know.
Oh.
I know it as Cancer Awareness Month for the most part, but not necessarily for Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah, and I think that just speaks to how prevalent mental health issues are in our country. So I decided, based on, of course, what you've just read in my experiences, I want to actually speak about it from a slightly different perspective. I want to talk about workplace trauma and how you can propel yourself from a workplace trauma perspective to becoming an entrepreneur. I think there are ways that if we look at mental health and think about it as a propeller, people can actually achieve a hell of a lot more than they do at the moment.
I want to ask one question. What do you mean mental health as a propeller?
Interesting, eh? So, I wasn't going to tell anyone this, but I will. I have suffered with depression for most of my life, since I was 16. And I have been on medication since my son was born 16 years ago. It's not something I'm particularly proud of, and it's a taboo thing to say, right? It's because people don't open up about mental health challenges. It's almost like things don't come together in your mind, which is actually not true. But one of the things that have created the profile that you read out, which to you is, and maybe to other people may sound impressive, is for the very fact that I have had this illness. And for me, it has always been the reason why I'm going to, show up even better than what I would have done if I didn't struggle with it. So that's what I mean when I say propeller, is instead of sitting back and allowing it to be the reason why you can't, use it to be the reason why you can.
How comfortable are you to share your experiences and some of the things that you are now using to create a greater sense of an awareness among those of your kith and kin, your family, for instance,
Fancy English.
your friends and your general circle of professional persons, just to ensure that there isn't another Manduli who at 16 possibly goes without being diagnosed? Because there's a lot of that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I did actually. Look, I was diagnosed, but my mom and my sister were very... my sister's she's actually a pharmacist, so she was not having it, and I actually only really got onto medication a little bit later. But I think the point of Mental Health Awareness Month is that we use everything that we can at our disposal to make people aware of the illness, to look out for the signs of the illness. I mean, part of why I'm specifically talking about it from a workplace trauma perspective is because quite recently we've heard of a story of an employee at one of the big banks, falling to their death, and that allegedly was a suicide. And I think those kind of incidences can definitely be, dealt with a lot sooner and avoided. So if it means I have to tell my story to save the life of just one person who is listening on the other end, who maybe had decided that tomorrow is the day, then I've done my job.
And you're going to do that with your guests. So, and I was going to ask this question.
Yeah.
Tell me about your guests.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I've got Susan Maduna. Very similar story to mine in terms of her own workplace trauma. You did say I only have 40 minutes, and as you can tell, I can talk. So she probably won't. She probably won't have time to tell the full story. And then I've got Tulu, who is also going to come on. Tulu fellow Khosimoto, who is also going to talk about her journey with workplace trauma. And then I've got somebody who has agreed.
What's the person's name?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
How? Don't rush me. Who has agreed at the very last minute, actually. And last minute, I mean yesterday, because, I'm a planner. But anyway, so she's agreed to come on and have this conversation with us. Her name is Beate Schulter Badach.
Okay, that sounds a very German name. Am I right?
Very. Look at you.
Am I right?
Yeah, of course you are.
Oh, look at me, of course. 2021 is the time. Ngaba Mabekle here on the way out. It is the hashtag Tuesday takeover we've got, and you've been listening to her for the last 10 or so minutes. Ms. Tlalane Ntuli, business coach, small business coach, particularly public speaker, entrepreneur, and somebody who's going to share a bit of her life's experiences together with her guests, Beate, Tulu, as well as Susan. After the break, it is the hashtag Tuesday takeover until the top of the hour, 21 hours. So, as always on the platform, respectfully and robustly, please do engage our guests. 086 000 2032, that's the studio line to dial in. 0614 104 107, that's the number to text or drop a voice note. And then the conversation is yours together with the team here in studio. After the break, it is the hashtag Tuesday takeover.
Tuesday takeover on The Viewpoint.
Oh my gosh, it's on. The red light is on and I need to be talking. He actually left me here, you guys. Ngaba walked out and left me here. Anyway, that's okay. As I said, October is Mental Health Month. If you are listening to me because I've asked you to listen to me today, please do not WhatsApp me. You're just making me nervous. But let's go back to why we are here. Because Ngaba has left me in the room. Today I'm going to be speaking to 3 guests who are all going to be sharing a certain perspective on the story around workplace trauma. I specifically invited them because I think there are very interesting moments of commonality, if I can call it that, between our stories. First of all, we've got in the studio with me today Susan Maduna, who will very shortly and briefly share her story just now. And then on the phone, I've got Tulu, who will also have a very interesting story to tell. And then Beate, who is actually the professional in this whole story to balance us all to make sure we don't go off on an emotional tangent. Because, of course, when it comes to mental health, the emotions do get stirred up. There is a little fact I want to share with you today, actually. I was reading as I was preparing for today that South Africa actually has one of the highest mental health problems in the world, higher than the States. Yep, that's us. and this one shocked me. We have more than a quarter of South Africans who at some point will either suffer or have suffered from mental health. And there are various reasons why people suffer from mental health. And for me, one of the ones that I wanted to spotlight today was, as I have said a million times, workplace trauma. So let's start with you, Susan. Actually, wait a minute. Before I start with Susan, I do have something that I want to read by a lady by the name of Disebo Ramunyadiwa. And Disebo is a strategic human resource consultant and a leadership and team coach who actually wrote something very touching. And as I was preparing for the show, yet again, I came across her post and thought it would be a great intro just before my guests start to speak. Disebo's post on LinkedIn really touched me. I'm going to read it to you. It is a little bit long, so I'll read just the parts that I think are most critical. She says, the recent cases of suicide as a result of workplace bullying are really disheartening, to say the least. Just this past week, one of the big bank's employees jumped off a building. A police officer turned a gun on himself, both as a result of bullying from their seniors. The decision to take one's own life can never be an easy one. It says a lot about when mental wellness is unattended to. Things escalated to desperate heights. And then she talks about being a coach and how she helps with that. But one of the things I want to read to you that she said, to all the leaders, and I mean, I count myself in this because I have held a number of leadership positions in various corporates. So I don't necessarily see myself as exempt from this point that she makes. She says to all the leaders, let's hold a mirror and really ask ourselves, are we doing enough to build inclusive and caring workplaces? Or are we such part of the system that we have lost ourselves in it? Are we dealing with the bullies the way we should, or do we keep protecting them? Do we have systems and processes in place for our employees to use as platforms to cry for help? And when they do we hear them? I have never come across an organization's value statement that promotes toxicity and bullying. Therefore, why do we allow such to happen under our watch? Why don't we hold each other accountable for living those beautifully crafted, inspiring values on our websites and walls at the offices? What a touching message, right? Particularly because I saw this after deciding to talk about workplace trauma. So just that, with that as an introduction, Susan, I'd like you to share a little bit about your story, but also let's not just paint the negative side, right? Let's also talk about how this trauma kind of experience that you had actually pushed you to where you are now. And I should have probably said that Susan is actually a co-founder and a director at MTV Auto Group, who I'm sure she will tell us about a little bit later in the show.
Sure. Good evening, Tlalane. Good evening to your listeners. You know, it's funny that you had to read that article just before I tell my story, because it relates to exactly that, you know. My story is exactly that, bullying in the workplace. And it's funny because you take long to realize, actually, I'm being bullied here. You know, you take quite long. So I was in the corporate for like 15 years and more. I'll talk about the recent for the sake of time. I'll talk about the recent one. I was in one of the banks for, I think, 14 years or 13 years.
Wow.
In that bank. And, you know, in the bank, there's hierarchies, you know, there's a level of this, a level of that, of reporting. And this particular individual was quite even, I think, 3 levels higher than to where my current position is.
Sure.
Yes, I was in a leadership role. I had my team. But the bullying around that makes it very... Like, you don't want to go to work, you know? You wake up and you're thinking, oh, my God, I'm going to deal with that person, you know? You then lose focus of the work itself, and you somehow put yourself into this trauma, and it sucks you in, you know? It's not a nice feeling. So in that space, this particular person, you would be raising issues that the team is facing. This individual will be like, no, that's not how it's going to go. Sort of like a controlling, a narcissist, to particularly put it, you know. So fast years down the line, we then thought, you know what, let's go to HR. And what I mean by we, me, my manager,
Yeah.
other senior managers
Yeah.
who were like, no, this is not right. This particular person would call you at around 8 o'clock at night and ask you for certain things. If they can't get hold of you, they will call you your husband, or they'll call whoever is at home.
What?
Yes, I'm talking about that.
my
So
goodness.
fine, we went to HR, and one thing I wanted to say, and I mentioned it earlier on, that it's funny how human capital is supposed to be for the employees
Yeah,
at work.
yeah.
But I tell you now, it is not. And
Yeah.
countless times we have approached HR on many occasions to say, please help us, please help us. Right? It got to a point where we feel brave enough, and we sent an email to the CEO of the bank to say, this is what we're experiencing, this is what we've tried to get help on, and this is where we are currently. So we literally never got help. So past now this whole trauma, and we talk about it because it birthed something, you know. Yes, I went through the trauma, but other people are not as strong as me, or other people are not as I'm going to show them type of energy, you know.
And you started the business.
And I started the business.
Amazing.
And yeah, with my passions that I had in place, and already that it was there already. I was just not giving it enough time.
Yeah.
So that pushed me to that corner to say, listen,
Yeah.
do that, do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So I started a company with my other partners, obviously. MTV Auto Group. It's in the West Rand,
Yeah.
just opposite Clearwater Mall.
Okay.
We're an RMI approved workshop,
Okay.
and we specialize in different brands of vehicles.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I didn't expect you to go into that depth of vulnerability, but thank you, because I think it really authenticates the story. Okay, so I want to remind you guys, we're talking today about workplace trauma, and I want to know, have you experienced workplace bullying? If so, how did you overcome it? How are you dealing with it? Are you in the middle of it? Please, whatever you do, do not jump off the building. Help is available, and we're going to talk about it. I guess Beata is actually going to tell us how. But before we go to Beata, I just want to pull Tsulufelo in here to tell us her story. So she is the founder and CEO of Blue Leopard Consulting, and she will tell us shortly what it does. But Tsulu, welcome to the show. If you can be brief and get us to the other line or the other side of your story, would love that. But please do tell us.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Tlalane. Thank you for the invite, and hi to your listeners. So, hey, Tlalane, workplace bullying is like really something that is not talked about enough, I believe. And in my case, I was working for a certain corporation where I actually learned everything that I know about my current company right now. So I started learning from them, and then I was just never a perfect fit. So they would move me from department to department. And then up until I will fast forward to the last job I had. I would fast forward to that where I was in a leadership role, and I was leading interns and so forth. So I had to teach them everything that they needed to know about tendering and the tendering space. So what caused me to actually make that final decision, because of course there were triggers with the years that I've worked. And with this one particularly, I felt like God is sending a direct message to me, because it was kind of like a sexual harassment where I would get calls in the middle of the night. I would get invites. I would get texts where I am called in specific names, not directly my name. And for a while, I was a bit confused about it. And I thought to myself, I need this job, you know, the desperation of wanting to feed your family. And I thought, no, I can contain it, up until it was just blatantly out there, whereby he acted like we're having a meeting, and he would offer me alcohol, you know, like it was really, really bad. And my stance in getting out of that space was, watch what's going to happen, because I'm going to come back, but I won't come back the same. I'm not going to come back as an employee, but I'm going to come back as us actually working together, and I will have a say when I come back. So I remember the one incident that I'm speaking about where the door was closed. I blatantly refused to partake in whatever that he did. Sent an email very belittling me in front of the juniors. And I was like, this is it. I'm packing and I'm never returning. And I think that actually saved me, because that's what led me to what I do today.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I am going to ask you a little bit later on in the show to tell us a little bit more about the business, because it sounds really, really interesting. I want to know what you consult in and how you're now helping your clients, because it sounds like you have really taken your power back from a really painful situation. But I think now I want to bring Beate into the conversation. Beate is a life coach. She will correct me. I know there is a formal topic a formal heading for what she actually does. Beate, I think as I started off a little bit earlier on, this is such an emotional conversation. Please come in here, correct me where I've been wrong, either on the pronunciation of your name or tell us exactly what that title is. But for the purposes of this conversation, for the purposes of the people that are listening in right now, I'm going to ask you to explain to us what is the definition of workplace trauma. But before you do that, I want to invite you guys again. Please call in our number 086 000 2032, SMS 41391, or WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 or you can tweet on actually it's X now, on SAFM radio. Guys, let's have a conversation. This is supposed to benefit all of us. Please come in with your questions. We're here to answer. We're here to reflect. Beate, back to you. Please tell us what that definition is.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored to be part of this, and this is one of my passions in my work. So the definition of workplace trauma, or you can call it career trauma or workplace PTSD, it's a very common word. It's an emotional response to negative events at work. As simple as that. So, and when we have an emotional response to something, we're no longer rational. And that's where the trauma starts. So it can be very subtle. It can be somebody who keeps using your own cup. It's your cup. It's already traumatic. It can be annoying, but if it's with purpose, the trauma starts there already. That's a start of a form of bullying. And we are taught from little on, we have to give all the time. We have to be forgiving, and we have to adjust, and we have to fit in. So our voice actually gets choked very early, right? No? Like in kindergarten, in the sandpit, you want your shovel back. And then the teacher says, no, but sharing is caring. Right? Can be traumatic. So, and the negative events at work, they can be accidents, they can be natural disasters, but most of all, it's toxic environment or job insecurity. If people are threatened all the time with, okay, we retrench you, or so people feel so stressed and so melted in that toxicity of the environment, and that's where the trauma sits. And the problem with trauma is it's not something out there, it's in you. Every cell of your body experiences that trauma. So eventually will start getting headaches. You will feel nauseous. You feel resentment towards going to work, but you force yourself because of you need the money. And all the time, you see, a normal stress response would be fight, flight, freeze or faint. But we're suppressing that all the time. We're not allowing ourselves to actually fight or flight, right? Because we have to sit it out. And this is extreme stress on the body. And it normally starts with physical symptoms, which we ignore, or we pop a pill. And then it slowly goes into the mental health issue where people can't sleep at night.
So that sounds,
they have nightmares.
Really familiar to me. The popping a pill, the sleepless nights, the headaches, they sound so familiar to me. And I want to ask, and I'm going to ask all of you here, is what are some of the common symptoms that, Beate, from your experience, you find that most of your clients come in and talk about, because you run a practice where you actually help people deal with this kind of thing. And then Tulu and Susan, from your perspective, I'd like to know, what were some of the symptoms that were telltale signs that people can actually look out for their for themselves and with their own experiences. So let's start with you, Beate.
Well, so normally people come to me because they feel that resentment in themselves. I can't do this anymore. I don't want that, but there's no alternative. And they all, instead of expressing it, they're suppressing it. And so it finds its way that it's a form of toxin. It's energetic toxins, and they find their way into their body. So interestingly, a lot of time, people that are stressed in their work environment, they start overeating, they turn fat and fatter and fatter. And they come, because I'm also a dietitian, so they say, listen, I'm just ballooning and I don't know why. And it's because the stress hormones need to go somewhere. So they start doing that. Or suddenly, or they start drinking, or they can't sleep anymore. They start using alcohol to actually, so it's very, very individual. There is no common rule. But if it's work related, it often comes out as a very severe stress response in form of trying to dose it down.
Thank you for that answer. I really do know what you mean, and I'm sure the ladies are going to talk to us just now. But before I speak to Tulu, you are listening to Tuesday Takeover on The Viewpoint. My name is Tlalane Ntuli, and we are about to take a short break. Afterwards, we will come to Tulu with her answer to the question around what her symptoms were. And we're back. Tuesday Takeover on The Viewpoint this evening with me, Tlalane Ntuli. I asked my guests a question a little bit earlier before we went off on break, and the question was, what were some of your symptoms that made you realize that you were actually going through workplace trauma? I want to start with you, Tulu. Please tell us a little bit of what your symptoms were, because I can tell you now from what Beate said, the eating one was definitely mine.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of my symptoms were obviously not wanting to wake up and go to work. And if I did, I'd get very tired. So I'd be very demotivated to work, unable to complete tasks on time. And then my biggest one that I struggle with, and it's a big alert for me, it's shoulder pains. So I'd get a lot of shoulder and back pains. I'd become very lightheaded. So physically sick, just thinking about the place that I'm going to. And the biggest one till date that I feel corporate started, this ongoing thing that I've got is anxiety, because I would even be scared to open emails, and I would be thinking, what is he saying now? You know, and that made me live with generalized anxiety till today. Where I just overthink everything and I overanalyze everything because I'm so used to being criticized for the most smallest thing. So, yeah,
but like we were saying, I'm sure that's one of the things that you're actually using to your benefit now in your business, right?
Yes.
How is it showing up in the business?
It's showing up because in my line of business, I need to pay attention to detail, because the slightest thing that you miss or slightest compliance that you miss, it can be as small as initialing a page or making, a certified copy, and it would be written in fine print. And all the things that would used to be negative, they've actually built me up to be able to pick them up so quickly. And somebody will ask you, how did you see that? You know, but because I was so used to being criticized, that it made me super like a perfectionist of note. Because, That's the one thing I pride about my company, because a lot of the times the tender documents are so long that you actually miss the one thing that you think you won't be disqualified for. Yeah. And that's the one thing that you actually need, and you know that it can actually be an award-winning tender.
Sure. Thanks, Tula. I really appreciate that perspective, and it sounds like exactly the things that Beate was just telling us about. But guys, guess what? We have a voice note, our first one of the evening. We are going to take a voice note question right now. Let's hear it.
Hi, Tlalane. Thank you so much for today's topic. It's very important. The question I have for you and your guests is that how do you make sure as an employee that your mental health is not used against you, your mental health illness is not used against you to be fired or to be, constructively dismissed? Because a lot of times we are scared to come out in the open and just be honest with our managers about what is really happening to us. And what do you think about the maybe just installing wellness programs where if you are really having a terrible mental health, day, you should be able to take a day off. What about that?
What a phenomenal question. We have another voice note. I'm so excited. Okay, let's hear the second voice note and then we'll try and tackle the questions, okay?
Good evening, SAFM takeover guests. I wanted to find out, particularly with when someone has gone into a workplace as a learner or an intern somewhere or inexperienced, where does the line, or is it drawn between harassment and actually being guided so that you don't drown and make drastic mistakes, but you're being guided through or coached through to a stage where you are then able to fly, as it were, or to be able to take responsibility on your own.
Love the questions, guys. Thank you so much to those listeners for posting them through. I want to post them. I'm going to start with Susan. I mean, the first listener actually asked about wellness, programs in the workplace. Oh my God, I'm losing my words.
And actually being victimized.
Yeah.
Because you've got such.
So what would you say to someone like that?
The corporate thing in me will say go to HR, but that's not going to work. So my advice definitely is take it up, make time for yourself, be aware of your symptoms, speak to somebody, get some help, because if you don't, you get buried inside it, and sometimes it explodes very abruptly and it consumes you quite a lot. So yes, there is victimization at work, and that is something that you need to stand up at. And unfortunately, if you don't fight it, nobody else is really going to come and save you and fight for it. So get some help, fight it from your angle, and don't give up.
Gosh, that's a bit of a bleak response about the HR.
I'm telling you.
I want Beate to come in here. I did say she's going to be our emotional balancer.
Yeah.
Beate, are there any sort of practical things that one can do in the situation that our listener was referring to? And how have you found in working with corporates that wellness programs have actually served or maybe not served employees?
There are still, there is a lot of big companies that do regular wellness days. But the way it's done, you have a card and you have to tick off that you've had your blood pressure taken, you've had your blood sugar taken, you were on the bicycle looking at your heart rate. But what I do, the body talkers, we have been at many, many bank days, BankMed, and we've been at big companies. I'm not going to mention names now, but we've been invited into their wellness days, and people they got off our plinth. We do little mini sessions where we just ask for one or two things about this person, not from the person, but just it's an intuitive work. And they get off that therapy bed and they phone their buddy on the next desk and say, you have to come down here. And the shifts that are happening, it's unbelievable. So wellness days and wellness programs, definitely. So it's a two-tier thing, because the people need to learn, be taught by HR that you can take care of yourself. There is self-care items. It can be a psychologist. It can be somebody like a body talker. There's a lot of alternative methods out there, and they're not using drugs.
Which is exactly what Susan was saying around, being a lot more mindful about your own body and respecting your body, answering that body. We've got the second question, which was around how does one actually identify that fine line between being guided and being harassed? Let me go to Ntuli here on this one, because I think you told a story about how from the very first job you've experienced some sort of workplace trauma. What are some of the things that people can do to immediately identify if something is problematic?
Okay, some of the things that people can be cognizant about is, when it feels like it's outside work. I mean, you're given your job description and you know what you're supposed to do, and it feels a little bit outside of what you're supposed to be doing. And you can see that it's outside of what you're supposed to be doing. I'll make a practical example. If you're being called at 9 o'clock at night, I mean, there already, it's a red flag. you know. And you need to be aware and put that boundary in place before then it becomes a norm. Then the questions are going to be posed unto you. It was never a problem before. Why now? You know? So you need to be cognizant of such things. One practical example that happened to me years ago as I started working is when I was like an administrator in a small company. And what I had to do then, I was an administrator / PA, and I was expected to be rinsing and warming up cups before the director could drink. And I had to warm up bowls before the director can drink.
That's definitely a line crossed.
You understand?
That's
so
definitely harassment.
You understand? Now we are really, really drawing the line between me entering another job description that's got nothing to do with what I am there for. And you must always be cognizant of such things, and they are there because they will make you feel uncomfortable. I like what's the lady's name? I forgot it. Beyonce. Sorry about that.
Just
but
say
I love
B.
what it is that your body will always tell you that this does not feel right, and I don't think it should be done this way. So, I think people must just be cognizant and listen to their guts.
Thank you, all three of you, for those responses. I don't want to sound like we're being doom and gloom about what's out there. So I've got a lot of HR friends in my group of friends, and the WhatsApps are coming in fast and furious. So let me read one of them. It's not all HR that doesn't support people. We have a number of ways we support staff, guys, through EAP programs. We have masterclasses on Wednesdays talking about various topics to support our people beyond just Wellness Wednesdays. So I think that's fantastic, and we need to see more of that happening in organizations. And I suppose that's the point around mental health awareness. I want to go back to you, Susan, because you never actually answered the question around what some of your symptoms were.
At that time, I had a lot of migraine attacks, right? And apart from that, waking up really was a drag for me to get out of bed and find a reason really why to go to work. And at that time, my husband would say, but I don't know why you're still going to work, stay at home. And that was one major for me. Apart from that was the anxiety attacks that Tulu already spoke about. Now, during COVID, remember, people had to create WhatsApp groups. So every time now my phone rings or I get an SMS or I get a WhatsApp message, I'm already in that mode, oh my God, what's happening now? You always feel like the building is going to break down or something bad is going to happen. So the anxiety attacks till today definitely is still there.
And so we've only got about 5 minutes left before we have to go to news. You are listening to Tlalane Ntuli. Oh my goodness, I can't even say my name now. I'm talking so loud. Or so quickly, rather. You're listening to Tlalane Ntuli on Tuesday Takeover on The Viewpoint. Let's talk about the positives. So let's flip this thing a little bit and talk about how these experiences, hard as they are, painful as they are, have actually meant that you are now, each of you, Beata included, although I'm sure it wasn't a traumatic experience for you.
It was.
Oh, was it? I'm so glad you didn't tell your story because you're really keeping us sane here. But talk to me, Susan, about how you have made it work in business and how some of those learnings are now showing up in a positive way.
Yeah, one thing I've always said to myself is my corporate is not going to be like the corporate I come from. Wow. So I make sure that even though we employ certain people and we'll put them into roles to try and ensure that they're not causing that trauma to somebody else. Wow. And I know it's such a thin line to do, but you gotta make it happen. So that's one thing that is on the flip side on me to say, listen, I'm not going to do that. It has really given me a strong character. I'm not defeated in any way. I'm not, even if the problem is really that big, and I ask myself after I've tackled it, how did I do it? But the character in me has developed much stronger than it was.
Can I be spicy? Are you going to have HR in your organization?
Oh, watch the space. It is coming, but not the HR I experienced, definitely.
And so I think there's a part of this that actually says, a lot of the time the experiences with individuals, not
Yeah.
necessarily with the organization.
Correct,
So
correct.
although we can paint the everybody with the same brush from that particular organization, I think there are pockets of excellence that happen. But I think that the reality on the ground for a lot of us is that we don't experience that positivity when
Sure.
we need somebody to stand by us and stick and support us. Beata, you said you had come from a traumatic experience, but how can people turn this really hard, really personal experience into something that can propel them into not just entrepreneurship, but successful entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think definitely if you've gone through, I mean, the ladies that are talking here tonight, they are powerhouses, but not everybody is equipped with that.
Sure.
If you, for instance, already had a very difficult upbringing, your self-esteem, if you're not really a fighter, an Artemis, you're going to actually always doubt yourself and you're always going to be timid. And so you will really need somebody to help you, to facilitate you through your trauma and to actually let it go, uncreate and destroy it, let it go and create something bigger and better out of that. So instead of trying to, I was traumatized as a child, I was traumatized as a youngster, always living in the past, being able through a facilitation to let go of the past and look forward. What else is possible here? What's my future? What can it be like? So that's one thing. The other thing, it's a modality that I do. It's called life print. By finding out what your individual highest driving needs are and to make sure they're being met. And if not, that you say, hang on, stop. And to enable people as young as they are to say, that doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. To make people find their voice, not fighting. It's about saying, hang on, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I am so grateful for that advice, and I'm sure our listeners are also grateful for that advice. I am glad I didn't have to share my story today, but maybe that will be for another day. We've got 1 minute before we have to cross to the news. My name is Tlalane Ntuli, and today I'm standing in on the Tuesday takeover on The Viewpoint. If you still want to send a really urgent voice note that we must listen to, please send it to 061 410 4107. And we're going to cross to the news just now at 9 o'clock with Greg Hoos. After this, we are also going to wrap up the conversation.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk. Tuesday Takeover on The Viewpoint.
And we are back, Tuesday Takeover on The Viewpoint with myself, Tlalane Ntuli. I must thank our hosts at SAFM for having us today, because guess what, you guys, they have just extended just a tiny little bit because we have such an engaging conversation going to give us a little extra time. And I want to come to you, Susan. You were just mentioning something that I think is really vital for people to hear, is what your experience was around taking this forward and really believing in the system.
Yeah, I was just touch basing on what we're saying, that the problem really is with the individuals within the organization and not the organization. However, there's a debatable form to say we took this matter to the CEO of the company and still nothing was done. However, after that, we were literally just victimized. Other people lost their job and it was bad. Till this day, nobody has really called the CEO himself to hear our stories. Of course, it delegated to somebody else, but literally there was a ticking point, we've done this. And then that was it. So
Beata, I want to come to you here. I mean, it does get really personal, doesn't it? And I mean, I want to acknowledge the fact that everybody's experience is different. But when we were briefing a little bit earlier today, you spoke about the need for us to stop expecting, I suppose, if I can put it that way, for the organization or individuals to show up a certain way, that it's actually in our own interest, if you like, to take responsibility for how we feel. Talk to us a little bit about that, and how in that, thinking like that could have actually helped Susan in the midst of her trauma.
So as I say, and as you just mentioned, this is all a very, very individual thing. And I think it's everybody's responsibility. If you show symptoms of distress, investigate that, seek help, find somebody, as I say, a psychologist, a life coach, anybody. You need to talk, you need to communicate instead of internalizing everything. Seek the help of somebody who helps you to express and find your own ways. And very often we need to take responsibility also for our part of the story, because very often it's a trigger that triggers the other person to start bullying you, and then to take responsibility for that and make different choices and actually just stay out of the confrontation with a person. I don't mean be cowardice, but make choices. If I now confront that person, will that be a contribution to me? Or if I give in yet again, will that be a contribution to me? And then make your choices from there, how you react to things. But fighting or flighting is running away. It doesn't solve the issue. One of your speakers said today she still has anxiety attacks when the telephone pings. So that means the trauma is still in the body and it's doing its work there, and it needs to go. And there are techniques like what I'm offering. There are techniques that release that once and for all. It's gone, finished. Why would you actually keep carrying all that old shit? Sorry for my word, all that old stuff around, instead of taking the backpack off, depositing in, and take the wisdom, take the learning from it, and move forward.
That's powerful. So I did tell you that I've got friends in powerful places in HR, and I've just got one of my friends saying people need to know, and they need to be taught that there's new legislation apparently that has come out that says that companies can now be fined for not acting on harassment. And I think if that is indeed true, and I'm sure we can do a little bit of research and post it onto SAFM social media platforms for those people who want to find out exactly what that legislation is, in case we run out of time today. Before I did ask for more detail for you guys, by the way, but I for me, I think that's good news, right? But also I think for me, what really is encouraging is the fact that we can use our own experiences in our own organizations, in the little companies, in the small companies that we're starting, to influence how people view themselves, how people experience us and the businesses, and hopefully that makes a small difference in the world. So I am running out of time quickly, and we're going to need to say goodbye. I'm going now to final thoughts. And I'd like your final thoughts to just come back to the business, because remember, we had promised that it's all about transitioning from trauma to entrepreneurship. I'm going to start with you, Susan. Then I will go to you, Tulu, and finish off with you, Beate. Remember, ladies, to say your goodbyes as you tell us what your businesses are all about and how people can get hold of you.
Sure. As mentioned before, I started MTV Auto Group along with my partners. We are in the West Rand, just opposite Clearwater Mall. You can reach us on www.mtvag.co.za. This is in the motor industry. We service, repair, and maintain vehicles. We specialize in different brands. The reason why we specialize is because we've got qualified technicians specializing on those particular brands. Thank you so much for having me again as a guest, and goodbye.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Sure.
Tulu, let's come to you.
Okay, I would like to say to your listeners today, before I even wrap it up with my information, is that I live by a saying that I got at corporate, and I live by it today, where I say that nothing that they give you to abuse you is actually there to kill you. It's actually there to make you stronger. So in every bad situation that you face in corporate, you can actually turn it into good, and that's where I regained my power, and that's how Blue Leopard was born. And I find myself sitting in the same boardrooms as the people that were oppressing me today.
Wow.
So I can say, really, really, you take your power back. Blue Leopard is a consulting company. So basically what we do is then go into the company, set up a tender sector.
Documentation.
Documentation and the sector as a whole, depending on how you want to do it. You either consult with us, so we come in on a 3-month basis when we set it up for you, and then you can then move on like that. We make sure that your compliances are up to date. We make sure that we look at your documents, make sure that you're compliant, making sure that we keep up with that, reminding you on expiry dates and so forth and so on. We also even have a service whereby we just purely do the analyzing of the document, where we look through what is required. Maybe you know how to put a tender document together yourself, but you just don't have the time to read the document. Then we give you that, and we give you a whole checklist on what you need to put together and how it needs to flow.
Cool.
So in a nutshell, that is
what
Blue
you're
Leopard.
And how
Yes.
can people get hold of you?
Yes, you can get a hold of me. Blue Leopard is on Instagram, it's on Facebook, and you can also, it has a direct line, it's 073 111 2621. I'll say it again, 073 111 2621.
Thank you. And Beate, your closing thoughts, please.
Yes, so my closing thoughts is I found something on Test Gorilla today. It says there, it's time organizations step up and support their people to relieve, overcome, and prevent their work-related mental scars. And there is a sentence of wisdom that I keep using in my field of work, which I'm going to describe shortly. Suffering doesn't lie in the fact, but in the perception of the fact. And by changing your perception from being a victim, actually undo the shackles, don't become the oppressor, but actually free yourself and change your perception. Say, thank you for bullying me. Thank you, I take the wisdom out of that. Now I at least know what doesn't work for me.
Thank
And
you.
that's my part of wisdom. And I'm part of, with my business partner, we've created Your Space for Wellness. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and we have a website, www.yourspaceforwellness.co.za. So we are about 15 different practitioners who do all sorts of alternative methods to facilitate people in finding their inner balance and to keep it there. And that's what I do.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. But before I share my final note and my goodbye, there's a final voice note. Let's hear it.
Hi, SAFM family, Queen, the Empowerer here. Thank you, Ngaba, for hosting Tlalane and the prestigious guest that she has in studio discussing the vital issue of mental health with us. Tlalane will remain an Aussie to me because before anything, she is a big sister. Having met her in under 6 months, Tlalane has contributed so positively in my life. She has already helped me in her lap in tears. She has encouraged me in entrepreneurship. And just last month, she advised me and the young leaders I lead in the areas of finances. So I just want to send a shout out and say thank you guys for this great show. Keep it up, man. Great show. And please don't deprive us of this beautiful, gorgeous lady. Keep bringing her in.
Oh my goodness, that does make me a little bit shy, but thank you so much. And a final message that also just came through. What a well orchestrated Tuesday takeover. I enjoyed it. The host is amazing. Thank you very much. And I am your host, Tlalane Ntuli, and I did the takeover on The Viewpoint. If you want to get hold of me, it is Ntuli wa Mosoto, because I am Soto married to a Zulu man. Love that about me. On Instagram. Also, you can get hold of me through my company, Space Fanatics, which is www.spacefanatics.co.za. And on Instagram, we are Space Fanatics. On LinkedIn, space underscore fanatics. And with that, I am going to hand it back over. Why am I getting nervous now? Because you're in the room. I'm going to hand it back over to Ngaba and say, very, very, very gracefully, thank you, and thank you again for having us.
More gracefully, I will say thank you for honouring the invitation. Thanks for coming to the platform and bringing the accounts that all of your guests have been able to put through and hopefully provide a bit of healing for many people who are suffering but too scared, or for whatever reason are reticent and remain reticent about their sufferings. Have you shared everything that you want to share with us?
I did. I suppose for me, I didn't maybe share a little bit about my own trauma story, which I really am not ready. No, not going to share it. But I am going to say this, that for me, building the business has happened in the suffering. In the suffering has been every reason to get out of bed and build, keep building and keep building again. So to all the South Africans listening to me today that are going through whatever mental illness issues, whatever workplace trauma, there is positivity on the other side.
There is one person I'd like to thank for giving you the strength to be able to do all of the things that you have done, and who's been through thick and thin, been the other party who has had to at times pick up the pieces, at times to lead, at times be just by your side and just let you be. Just as he is in studio today, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So tell him exactly what you think right now.
And you're making me tear up. He is my husband of 17 years. Tomorrow is our son's 16th birthday, actually. Happy birthday, Owetu. Love you lots. Hope you're in bed. And we have been at this for 26 years. So, yeah, he's really walked the journey with me. I couldn't have done it without him.
He has a name?
And his name is Tlalane Ntuli.
Brasbu, Thanks for manning up, my brother. It's good to see you here, and thank you for facilitating the exploration of these stories and for bringing truth to many a people's suffering, but more importantly, just giving it a name and a face and context, and it being all relatable. And you being here is truth and strength to all of those voices out there who are hopefully going to find theirs sooner rather than later. So thanks to the Ntuli couple for honoring this and owning it as you guys have. So
thank you.
Yeah, guys, I don't want to create waterfalls here. I'm starting to see many teary eyes. It's 2118.